All right, you ready, Cam?
Yeah.
All right. So we've got with us this morning Alice Masters. Alice is cooking, so we're going to actually try and do this while she's cooking. I'm working, so kind of sneaking this in during public service time, but all good. Cam, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I just had a small disaster and dropped my phone.
That's all right. You know how we do things at WD.
That's right.
Now, I've got a few questions. I've got a couple of things. So before we get into why we've actually set up this interview, I wanted to find out how you were going during the lockdown, what you've been doing, how you've been coping, what have you been doing to cope, all that sort of stuff.
So I guess I'm an essential worker, so I've still worked throughout the entire lockdown period. We haven't had any time off or reduction in our hours. But I have been working on my COVID curves with the obviously like not having any sort of sport or recreation that I would normally participate in and would normally take up a lot of my spare time. I've been finding
this is huge for you.
Different ways to be still.
Yeah. Because you're right. You're absolutely right. Because you are normally in amongst playing, well, as well as playing rugby, you've got footy, you've got basketball, and you kind of juggle all that sort of stuff. So, are you enjoying the downtime, or are you missing being that active?
I think in some ways, like it's been good to have a break. Obviously, I'm not the youngest chicken in the coop. So I had some niggling injuries that, well, I don't know if they've healed, but they don't cause me pain right now.
That's all right.
We'll see when I increase the training load if they return or not. But yeah it took probably nearly a year before I was able to, coming off the back of the last Super W season, where until I was able to like walk without any pain. So that was good.
Well, yeah, that's right, because you had a really severe case, and even when you were playing with us last season, your fasciitis was a huge thing for you. So, and now is that still lingering, or have you
no pain?
Kicked it to the curb? Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so that's been good.
All right. So you said you're an essential worker, so you've pretty much maintained work throughout the whole lockdown period.
Yeah.
And so when you're not working, because you do shift work.
Yes.
Okay. And so the questions we asked some of the other girls in the previous interviews was, what are you doing to keep yourself sane?
Well, I've found that I now sleep up to 10 hours a day. But I walk the dogs every day. I've got 2 dogs now, so they are quite highly active, so they need a good walk every day. So when we were only allowed out for 1 hour, that was pretty much my hour of outdoor activity was taken up just with looking after them. So we got a few little bits and pieces of home gym equipment. I think our motivation lasted for like the first 2 to 4 weeks maybe, and then it quite significantly waned. I did watch the entire series of Game of Thrones.
Because you're fine.
So I hadn't watched it at all because watching TV was something that I'd previously kind of had to sacrifice through like being busy with sport and stuff. I didn't watch TV much at all, like maybe a couple of hours a week, whereas some people watch a couple of hours a day, and I just never made that commitment. So yeah, I got Game of Thrones ticked off the bucket list.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, you need that much time, I think, just to get through the whole series, don't you? So,
yeah.
All right. So like I said, before we get into your job, and I'll get you to describe, what you do, and then also talk about the opportunity that's come up. Something that you're looking forward to when lockdown rolls back. What are you looking forward to the most?
To be honest, there's a couple of things. I would love to go out and have a few drinks, like a nice crisp cider on tap, and have a beautiful meal cooked for me that I don't have to do any dishes at the end of. And just simple things like hanging out with like a group of people in the park, having a kick of the footy or throwing a ball around. And maybe go horse riding. And
really?
Fishing. Yeah.
Fishing I get. Horse riding. So have you ridden horses before?
Yeah, I used to ride quite a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, but I guess probably in the last 5 or 6 years, I haven't ridden that much. I've just done the occasional sort of trail ride here and there.
Yep.
But I used to like get lessons and stuff and do like show jumping or whatever. I didn't really compete, but I used to just ride.
You're a woman of many layers, Alice, that's for sure.
I've got many layers on now, thanks to COVID.
All right, so let's get to it, and we'll talk about your role. So you've flagged with us, and I think it's pretty critical at this time because we've got a lot of girls who are going through year 12, possibly some girls who are going through year 11, and as far as what happens beyond 2020, they're probably looking forward to either work, study, combination of both, or perhaps taking a break. So as we thought it would be good to have a look and chat to the girls in the team around their experiences, what their roles are, in case there were any girls interested in particular fields. And as it happens, you flagged with us, like I said, that there are traineeships coming up with. Now, is it the V line? V line. All right. So can you talk to firstly your position and what that actually entails, but then the actual traineeship as well?
Yeah. So I actually don't work for V Line. I work for Metro.
Yep.
But it's basically what they're looking for is a trainee train driver. So just over 2 years ago, I went through the trainee. I applied for a position with Metro as a trainee train driver, and I didn't have any experience. I'd never driven a train before. I'd ridden on a few, but I didn't really pay that much attention as to how they work. But basically, they provide you with all the training that you need to be able to take a train from being, cold in the yard, warming it up, doing all your pre-start and safety checks and things like that. They'll teach you how to do a couple of basic, fault-finding things to make sure that you can bring a train safely into revenue service to pick up passengers. And then they'll teach you about how the rail network works, the safe working systems that are in place, how the signalling works so that what speeds you can travel at and things like that to ensure that you can drive a train safely and on time.
And on time.
Sometimes. Time is not the priority. Safety first.
Well, and so you've been driving on your own now for how long?
So I've been on my own since January this year.
Okay. And so, but you had quite an extensive training period, didn't you? So it wasn't like they just threw you in. Can you talk about what that actual process was or looked like? You've already touched on it, but yeah, how long was it? What did it involve? Was it books? Was it practical?
Yeah, so when you first start, it's basically in the classroom. They teach you about the theory around, railway fundamentals, because unless you work in the rail industry, it's something you don't really think about at all. But they'll take you through, railway fundamentals, safe working systems and signalling. And then after that, you have to do exams, and once you pass those theory exams, then you can go out on the network. Sorry, my dogs are having a fight in the background. They're very excited about this. So they'll you go through, you do your exam, and then you can go out and start to get some practical experience. Then they'll take you through all the lines that you would drive on. So you learn about you know, where you're going, and if there's any like specific things you need to know about with those, and then the train types and how the trains work, and a little bit of the I guess the mechanics of how a train operates, and then how like things that could go wrong and things that could affect you while you're out on the network. Yeah, so after that you do more exams. And then you go out with a driver and you drive. And so you drive, you have to get a minimum number of hours driving. It's around 200, it was around 250 for Metro. And then you also have to like complete each component that you would be doing in your day-to-day work a minimum number of times, and then you're assessed on each one. So then once you've been assessed on each one once, you go back and you do final exams, and then you do a final assessment, which goes for a whole week.
Okay. And what's that assessment? Is that a written or is it a combination of?
It's a practical assessment, but they will ask you questions, but you don't have, like, so you do your final exam is a written exam. It goes for, it's 2 days.
Yep.
And then you do a week of practical assessments with like the principal driver, so a senior driver.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So you've, and I guess for some of the girls, and, you know, whether it's something that they want to have a look at, there is a traineeship that you've, that we can put up with this video, and that closes on the 26th, I think, of October for V-Lines. So what would you, I guess, for anyone who's thinking about it, either for themselves or maybe a friend or a family member, is it, are they targeting women specifically? Are they?
Yes.
Okay. So
part of the, obviously the rail industry has always been like a heavily male dominated industry. And so their target is not to reach 50-50, but because the number of women represented in the rail industry is so small, they're just looking to increase it, I think, over the next 8 to 10 years to around 40% representation. So they do have a special dispensation to actively recruit females, but they're not only recruiting females as well. They look for obviously the best candidates that they can get. So in my course there was 12 people and we had 9 females and 3 males.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. That's not bad, the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we have, you know, you go through, you're now at a point where you're driving, and whether it's something that's a draw card for people, but what's typically like the starting base rate for income, both when you're training, because it's not a full.
No, it's not full.
But what would you be looking at as a starting point for when you're up and running on your own?
So as a trainee, you'll be looking at earning around $50,000 a year.
Okay.
At least. I think it's around $25 an hour. And then when you start driving, you do shift work. So you can attract shift penalties. So you get double time on Sundays, night shift penalties, weekend penalties, etc. And then when you qualify and you become an independent driver, but you'll still be within like a probation period for 6 months. So until you I think your hourly rate goes up to around, I'm not 100% sure for V-Line, but around $35 an hour. And then once you're fully qualified around the 18-month mark, you'll go onto your full rate, which I think for Metro is around $54 an hour. Yep. And for V-Line, I think it's actually around 65.
Okay. All right. So, you know, that I think that in terms of what, you know, pay rates and that, it's more than modest. Yeah, and particularly if you're just starting out, if it's something that you've not done before, if you're looking for work. So I think that, yeah, definitely worth, and we'll note it all down as well, just the key points around what you've touched on. In terms of preparing for the interview, so I'm going to go back a couple of steps. And so in terms of preparing for the actual interview process, What do you think are some of the skills the girls could probably draw on based on, you know, playing, that you think would be they could highlight as a part of the application process?
Well, the rail industry is quite strongly focused on safety. So that's always a priority. So learning the skills to ensure that you can operate safely is probably easily transferable across from rugby to train driving.
Yep.
Making decisions, decision making, and task prioritization. So it's not so much about being able to do more than one thing at a time as being able to select the most important task and do that first, and then in quick succession complete the next task and then the next task after that. Yep. So things like, you know, as if something happens and you know, something goes wrong, you have to deal with it and you have to move on, and you have to deal with it and move on quickly, to ensure that whatever happened then doesn't become worse.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think the other thing is also, so is it a high pressure job? Like, do you think that it's also something that, you know, and I think about when you're on the field and all that sort of stuff. So for me, it's about making that stuff relate. And always when we prepare for interviews, you look at drawing on your experience. For a lot of our younger people, sometimes it's just school, sometimes it's just rugby. And so it's knowing what to take from those different scenarios. So pressure, you've talked about risk, decision-making, coping under pressure. Do you think is that something that they need to be able to cope with or work through?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the way that our system is designed is that, like when something like if you're on the train and something goes wrong, you're there by yourself, you're driving on your own. But that being said, there's people that you can call on. You do have a team like behind you. You've got principal drivers who've got a wealth of experience, and they've also got, you know, you've got the train controllers who can, you know, sort of direct traffic or contact people on your behalf and get assistance to you. So it's more about just not freaking out, I guess, under pressure when a pressure situation arises.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, and I think it's good to highlight, you know, that, and it's like any job, like there will be situations where you can have all the plans in the world and then just something happens and you've just got to prepare or like be able to cope with it. What are some of the great things about driving? Because it sounds like it's quite an autonomous job. So, you know, when you're up and running by yourself, what are some of the great things that you take away from work?
So personally, I just, I mean, some days I just think I'm really lucky to do it as a job. You know, I think the other day I was driving somewhere, I think maybe to like Frankston. I don't particularly like that line, but it was a beautiful day. The new station at Carrum, which one day we'll all get to see because we'll be allowed to go that far. You know, it's elevated, so you've got like a beautiful view across the water, you know, and like that's a privilege right now in Melbourne to be able to just see something like that. Yeah. So I don't take that for granted.
And so what would you say to encourage girls to have a look at the traineeship? Like if they were thinking about it, what would you say to encourage them to apply?
Just apply. I mean, the worst case scenario is either you're unsuccessful the first time or you get in and you decide you don't like it, so you do something else with your life. Like there's no risk with trying something new. It's a good job. You're not going to take a pay cut starting out unless you're already earning, you know, like a professional wage. You know, most people I think wouldn't start out on their first job at 50 grand a year and it's only for a year. Your pay rise is guaranteed after the 18 months. So, yeah, the training is not easy, especially when you go out with a driver, because you still have to study while you're working full time, but it's not unachievable. If I can do it, you can do it too.
And would you be available if people had questions or if they wanted to ask about the actual, first the application and the role itself?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I said, I've worked for Metro, so it's slightly different. It's a different company, but I guess most of the principles with regards to the railway are the same. So yeah, I'm more than happy to ask questions or answer questions, I should say.
One thing that it says on the application is that no experience is needed.
Yeah.
So you don't have to come into the job with any sort of prior.
They'll teach you everything that they want you to know.
Okay. So
and they won't send you out there unless you're capable of doing it.
Okay. No, that's a good thing.
Get to where you need to be. So you don't have to think like, oh, I've never driven a train, or, you don't even need a car license. So you don't even have to, drive a car or, be experienced at operating machinery or any of that. Because every piece of machinery is different. There's different train types. So the train types that they drive at V-Line, I can't drive them. I don't know how. They're different. So, so they'll just teach you what you need to know, and then they'll release you out into the railways.
Cam, was there anything else that you wanted to highlight that will help encourage anyone who's thinking about it? Not even just the girls, like there might be someone who's got a family member who's looking for work that might want to apply.
Yeah.
Is there no age limit, or sorry, what's the minimum age? I'm going to say legal working age, or?
I think it's 18.
You can't be 12 and apply. That's what I'm
I don't
saying.
think you can be 12 and apply. I think it's 18.
18.
Yeah.
No worries.
But that being said, I mean, they'll do a recruitment now, and they'll be recruiting over the next, they'll do this recruitment, and the pool of recruits that they get for this, they'll draw upon for the next year.
Yep.
So if you're 17 now and you think, oh, I'm too young to apply.
Yep.
If you're successful and they think that you're a good candidate, they'll wait for you to turn 18.
Yep.
So, and that being said too, the way that they recruit is very similar to the way that most large organisations recruit. So if you're looking at becoming a police officer, a customs officer, a prison officer, any of those kind of organisations, probably, if you wanted to work in any government job, like if you wanted to work for NDIS or Centrelink or whatever, most of those agencies all recruit in a very similar fashion. So the experience of applying and going through the application process, especially if you haven't really done it before, is invaluable, because every time you do it, you get better at it.
Yep. No, that's it. And so I think you've already, and we haven't gone into what you were doing before this, but so this isn't your first job.
No.
But prior to, and it's still in the same sort of theme along preparing beyond high school, and all this stuff around, interviewing, writing CVs, all that sort of stuff. So your work life before this, you'd had quite an extensive career in federal government. Is that fair to say? Yep. So you talked about the interview process. Is that something, if at a later time people wanted to understand, what do they need to do to prepare for interviews? Would you be happy to assist through that as well?
Yeah, I think, I'd be happy to do that. I think it's most interviews I find and recruitment processes are very similar. They'll ask you very similar types of questions. And then the other stuff is sort of pretty straightforward. Like, obviously, you want to be well presented, but you need to think also about the role. So, when I went to my interview as a train driver, I wore like enclosed shoes instead of like high heels and a skirt. But for other roles, that's not going to matter. you know, I mean, even if you're applying as a train driver, it doesn't matter if you wear a skirt to your interview because, you know, like they'll just give you a uniform once you start. So, yeah. But
No.
yeah, I think definitely like having a good resume and having someone else look over it, because when you look over something over and over and over again, you're never going to pick up on your own mistakes. So it's good to have like a peer review, because, you know, some people like will spell the same word wrong every single time. So it's consistent throughout, you know, the whole document.
Yep.
So you wouldn't even know.
Yeah, that's it. So like, say for instance, someone write there as in over there instead of it's their thing. And so, yeah, that's it. So, and if that's how you spell it, it's going to just keep coming through
Always
everything.
the I's and the
the I's and the A's. That's it. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to let you go finish your dinner, unless there was anything else. Again, if there's anything that you wanted to add that's going to encourage people to apply.
Yeah, I just think give it a go. Honestly, like there's a lot of old people working in the railway, but that's because they've never left. Because
so job security is a good thing then, yeah?
Yeah, you've got jobs. Well, if you want to talk about job security, like look at right now, so many people, you know, are taking probably leave without pay, or they're just stood down from work, or they're on a Centrelink benefit or whatever. You know, we've been very fortunate that we've just continued to work, like our hours are guaranteed each week. And yeah, so I don't think, like, the job retention is huge, which means, you know, it's a sign that obviously people are staying in that job for a reason. And it's not because they're incapable of doing anything else.
Yeah.
It's because they want to be there, because they enjoy what they do. And yeah, they love it. So yeah, it's great.
No, it's good. It's good to hear. So Cam, if once we've done the video, I'll put up the PD, so the position description. And again, if you're happy, people can PM you if they've got any questions. And then we'll go from there. But thank you for your time. Hopefully we'll be able to touch base again and everyone sit down and have that. I'm hanging for a cider. I'm a bit like you, just want to sit in the sun.
Yeah.
Want to have some good company, some nice, you know, a nice grazing board, and just chill and reconnect with everyone. So
yeah,
I'm going to stop recording. Thanks, Cam, for your time.
Yeah, no worries.